Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Mobile Challenge. If necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, and we're having a special Saturday edition of the Gaggle because of these rather startling events that have taken place within the last 24 hours. So everything started with news of some explosions in Caracas, and then at 4:20 a.m. Eastern Time, President Trump sent out a truth saying there's been a military operation and that President Maduro and his wife have been seized and are now essentially in U.S. custody and presumably on their way to the United States. Obviously, these are very early hours, and we don't exactly know everything that's happened. In fact, we know very little about what has happened. Um, but from what one can deduce, this was a very limited operation, and that this is not a major move for a regime change. This was to take out Maduro. And now, how this was done, it sounds as if people around Maduro were bribed to give him up because there was very limited, in fact, almost no fighting whatsoever. It was over very quickly. Um, Obviously, the American Special Forces knew exactly where to go and to seize him. It was all done obviously, with meticulous efficiency. So therefore, people on the inside had to have given him up. So the next step would be when you have to assume that there was some sort of a deal that was done by Trump administration and the government in Caracas, whereby you give up Maduro and the pressure campaign against you will be relieved. I mean, that's at least at this stage, what one can deduce. But obviously, more details are going to emerge.
Yeah, I agree with you, but what does that supposed to mean? Um, we have a vice president um, waiting in the wings, apparently, and she was very closely aligned to the Maduro project. So, is she have to go, or was she in on it? We don't know. I fundamentally agree with George's supposition that he was given up. Okay. Now, what does that mean that Venezuela has been sold off to the highest bidder of the United States? Far from it. Far from it. Okay. We don't know. I mean, you and George and I, when this started coming on everyone's radar with the destruction of ships and the seizure of tankers, we made it very clear taking out Maduro is not really, it's not hard to do. They just proved it, okay, for the reasons that George explained. Now, what happens next? There you go. Now it gets a bit murky here. Was it meticulously planned for today, okay, and tomorrow, and next week, and next month? We're going to find out.
Well, I have my doubts that was, but it's very hard to know the internal dynamics of the government in Venezuela. I would assume that what they will now do is they probably hold elections. I mean, since they don't really have any legitimacy. I mean, if Maduro's gone, he was the one who ran for re-election. So you can't just have the vice president comes in and now she's going to govern. So I assume just in order to keep everyone happy that
Yeah.
they're going to hold
Yeah, but will
elections.
Maduro's party be barred from participating?
Well,
See, now it gets sticky.
I don't know. That's a good question. And then we have to then think in terms of the military. I don't know how the system works there. To what extent does it revolve around Maduro? Does the place collapse without him as a central figure? Because he's been in power now 13 years. So, he's the one. He's the anointed successor of Hugo Chavez. So therefore, you know, this woman, yeah, she's been around, but nobody really knows much about her. It's unlikely that she has any of the authority or charisma that's associated with Maduro. So it'd be hard to believe that she'd be able to consolidate the government. So that's why I assume that they're going to try and hold elections in the near future. I have to think that there's some kind of a deal that was done with the administration that this was that okay, you give him up, maybe we'll give you some money, and then we'll stop all the bombing, we'll stop seizing your ships carrying oil.
What
Um,
about the sanctions?
well, that's a good yeah, we don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, I
down
mean
the road.
that's why I say, tomorrow, next week, next month. Okay, for all I know, there were people with power, be it in the military, the security institutions, even political parties. They'd had enough of Maduro, and that seems very plausible to me. Kind of an odd guy. You look at his antics and all of that. But just how far? I mean, the way it's possible, a possible way to look at it this way is that Trump said, just get Maduro out and let's back off from this, okay? Let's take the win. Let's
Yes,
take the win. Now,
right,
does that mean American policy towards Venezuela is going to dramatically change? We don't know.
right,
We don't know.
right.
And George's supposition, it seems clear to me he was given up by his inner circle.
He
Okay,
had to be.
but what do they get in return? Okay, because you kidnap someone. This is obviously illegal. This is an assault on their sovereignty. Okay, you gave them up, but now we're going to go to the next layer. Now you and you and you. I mean, when you trust people to do something like this, you could fall for it, fall into it as well. And that's a risk you obviously have to take. So I suppose for both of us here, how deep planning was there? Okay, having the Delta Force come out and take Maduro when the door was left unlocked. Okay, that's one thing, but what is policy towards
Well, we
Venezuela
don't
going?
know. I mean,
It is
down the
one
road.
last thing, one last thing, and is it incumbent on getting an election outcome that Washington likes?
Well, it's very difficult to say because the Maduro thing is just going to become an obsession of Trump's, and so therefore he wanted Maduro out because that's an unfinished business since his first term.
Yes,
Then the question is, does he have any real objections to uh, this woman who's going to be the vice president, or he may just assume that she isn't going to survive, that somehow without Maduro, that the government is going to start just panicking and just essentially just basically hold elections. It's to me, it seems unlikely if they hold elections, it's very unlikely that they're going to be reelected. I just they've now been essentially once an event like this takes place, they've been discredited. I mean, they just look ridiculous, frankly. I mean, the United States comes in, takes out the president. Obviously, the people in Venezuela will know he was betrayed from within. When you do something like that, then you're not going to win any kind of a mandate from the public. So I assume they will lose the election.
right.
Then who question who comes next? I think that's the Trumpian calculation. But you have to then say this is a victory for Trump. I mean, you got to credit him. This is a huge win. I mean, there's
Well,
no,
that's okay.
no. I mean, you can say what's going to happen 12 months down the road. Today, Trump pulled this off, and this is this.
Well, I don't think.
Uh,
Okay,
Here, I think we
if I
disagree.
fine, okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Regime change is okay, and it because it's going to score you domestic political points. Okay, I got a narco terrorist, which he obviously wasn't. Okay, it's a Pyrrhic victory in my mind. Sure, he's gonna, in the Marco Rubio crowd and all this are all going to be patting themselves on the back. And then they move on. Cuba, Nicaragua, Colombia. This sets a precedent here. So I don't think it's anything that I don't think Trump should be proud of. I know
Oh, I
he
think
does.
that, but
I'm sure he's
you gotta
proud of
no,
it.
but
Okay.
this is where in politics you take your wins. You get and whatever you may
Okay.
down the road. Nothing is ever settled, but you have to take your
Yeah.
wins
Well,
in politics.
he Trump bombed Iran. Take the win, huh?
Okay, and well, he did take the win. I mean, and you
Okay.
have to
All
say
right.
that was a win. I mean,
Okay. Well, then you're looking at it in a very narrow
well,
way.
look,
the implications
But
of
you
this,
gotta, no,
given the nature of these types of actions, I think you would agree with me that the law of unintended consequences begins
oh,
to
down
kick
the road. But that's the thing.
in.
No problems are ever solved. But ultimately, when you pull something like this off, then you have to say, okay, that is a win. That is a win. A great power comes in, minimal casualties, and they take out a leader. Now, we can argue about morality, we can argue about legality, we can argue about the future and whatever.
All those
My
things kind of count, George. They kind
no,
of count.
no. That you take the
Okay,
win. It's like
fine.
let's say
Take the win. It's
Oh,
just
come
weird.
on, come on.
Yeah.
Let's try and
Weird.
think about this in a rational way. Hungary in 1956, the Soviet Union went in and they took out the leaders. They took it was a huge condemnation. Everyone hated, the Soviet Union, condemned throughout the world what the Soviet Union did. It was a hugely successful operation, an enormous success. They pulled this off. They did it very cleanly. They executed the leaders of the Hungarian uprising, and down the road, people knew you don't mess with Moscow. And
Yeah, but
that's I think, and that's
what the
but
United States did
you have
was
that's
wrong.
what
What the United States has done is wrong. I mean,
but what the Soviet Union did was
under
wrong.
what
I mean, everyone, yeah,
jurisdiction under what jurisdiction
listen,
is he going to be tried? Okay.
well, he's going to be
I mean,
tried in the
but why
southern.
is his wife
Well,
being detained? This
look.
is a kidnapping. And that is
No,
that
listen, look. The United States is going to present the argument that, which is what they did with Noriega, that he
will
has
you
been
agree with the
indicted.
argument? Will
What?
you agree with the argument?
No, I don't agree with the argument, but
Okay.
I do believe in sovereignty. But I also have to live in the real world, and we're not sitting here, arguing about the finer points of legality and morality. What we do know is that great powers act ruthlessly and brutally. And you can then argue afterwards: was this legal? Was this in accord with international law? Was this in accord with morality? We know what the United States is going to do. The United States indicted Maduro in 2020. That's the case. That's going to be the say. Yeah, we were executing the warrant, and this is what, in fact, they've already done. They've already said. Here, I'll show you. Well, they've said that this was in pursuit of a warrant. Just to show you.
Okay. What about the real narco terrorists
Okay,
in
well,
South America?
you can
What about
okay,
them?
that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
That's fine. How can you say stuff like that, George? That's
Well,
fine.
no, I mean, you can say the real narco, but you can say, look, we're talking serious stuff. We're talking about geopolitics. We're talking about international affairs. We're not talking about what is moral and what is legal. That's a different issue. Those are very different issues. We,
Yeah, well, for small countries, that's right. All bets are off. Okay, okay, that's a nice world to live in, George. Yeah.
we've been living in that world forever. So that's the world we've been living in. Um, so this was the announcement. This was Trump's announcement, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. I can't remember whether his wife was indicted as well. So I don't know why his wife.
Well, I think it was a couple of hours ago that Pam Bondi.
Yeah, but that's what I'm going to show you. Let's look at that.
Okay, all right,
So
all right.
this is Mike Lee. Mike Lee sent out this tweet yesterday and says, well, I look forward to learning what, if anything, might constitutionally justify this action in the absence of a declaration of war or authorization of the use of military force. Now, right away, the point about it, when you send a tweet like this is that the United States has pretty much throughout its history acted without bothering with the Constitution and without seeking authorization from Congress. And I mean, once or twice it's done it, but by and large, most military actions taken by the United States have not been authorized by Congress. So you can say, oh yeah, like, according to the Constitution,
Yeah, yeah,
the
Constitution doesn't
declaration
really.
of war power inheres in Congress. Yeah,
Yeah,
good one.
the
But
value of the Constitution has
right,
been so
exactly.
degraded. So
And then we have Lee sent out another tweet saying, okay, just got off the phone with Secretary Rubio. He informed that Nicolas Maduro has been arrested by U.S. personnel to stand trial on criminal charges in the United States, and that the kinetic action we saw tonight was deployed to protect and defend those executing the arrest warrant. The action likely falls within the president's inherent authority under Article 2 of the Constitution to protect U.S. personnel from an actual or imminent attack. Well,
What is the imminent attack?
there's no imminent attack.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
uh, and then this is the tweet sent out by the Attorney General. Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Chilio Flores, have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. That happened already in 2020. Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices. So they will soon face the full wrath of the American justice on American soil in American courts. On behalf of the entire US DOJ, I would like to thank President Trump for having the courage to demand accountability on behalf of the American people, and a huge thank you to our brave military who conducted the incredible and highly successful mission to capture these two alleged international narco traffickers. Um, so that's going to be the U.S. argument, which is that we were executing a warrant. I mean, look, I'm not sitting here, justifying this. I think it is quite absurd. But what I am saying is that this is the world of international relations, this is the world of realpolitik. And in that, if you look in that sphere, you could say, hey, well, we did it. We took him out, and but no one's gonna mess with us. No one's gonna gainsay us. Um, you know,
Yeah, well, I mean, George, why is the United States so obsessed with the regime nature of other countries?
well,
Yeah, I feel bad for Venezuelans. I mean, they're not leaving Venezuela because it's because of the weather, okay? I mean, it's a rough place to live. I understand that. But is it incumbent upon a country like the United States to determine those kinds of political
but
outcomes?
it's been,
And like
yeah,
I
all
said,
right, all right.
and like I said, if the you're most likely right, the to dress it all up, as it were, call for new elections. Well, who will be able to participate in those elections? I don't think Maduro's party will be allowed to participate, which is more than half the country. You know, I'm not. I'm not going to stand up for election integrity in Venezuela. You know why, George? Because I don't know anything about it.
Well,
Okay.
I think I haven't done that, and we haven't done that, and you say, okay, I never went in for all that. So who won the 2024 election?
Yeah.
And I didn't care, to be honest. I mean, it's a Venezuelan internal matter. But the point is that the United States has been doing this in Central and South America for
What do you
since
think the
forever.
real reason is that Trump did this? What's the real reason? It's not narco-terrorism. We
No,
know
I
that.
don't think so. I think it's to enact his agenda of that he spelled out in the national security strategy, total dominance of the Western Hemisphere, and thereby he is now thinks that he will now induce terror among all of the governments there. Anyone who thinks that
Well,
it
I
can
guess that's
defy
a
the United States.
yeah, green light for China to take Taiwan. Green light. Yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
that yes,
Yeah. I
that
mean, I got it. I got one a nanosecond of chuckling today is that where are the Europeans? How
oh yeah, yeah, well,
outrageous.
yes, you were, well, they,
And the national security advisors are of the European
yeah, yeah,
Union?
they're dealing
They're
with
in
that.
Kiev.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this was the yeah on that. Um, Very good question. Where are the 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 Europeans? And here is our good friend Kaya
Yay!
Kallas.
Yay! Yes, I heard what was it from Sopranos? She stuck her beak in. Yeah.
Yes, that
Okay.
could be good. I have spoken with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and our ambassador in Caracas. The EU is closely monitoring the situation in Venezuela. Why? I don't know why. What's it got to do with you? I mean, we're closely monitoring it. Okay. The EU has. I mean, notice how I don't think Trump notified the EU what
I
he's going to
don't
do.
think so, John.
The EU is closely monitoring the situation. The EU has repeatedly stated that Mr. Maduro lacks legitimacy, as if you're in a position to judge, and has defended a peaceful transition. Well, that's not peaceful. Under all circumstances, the principles of international law and the UN Charter must be respected. We call for restraint. The safety of EU citizens in the country is our top priority.
Meanwhile, I have to get back to work on denigrating Russia. Thank you for
That's
the
right. That's right.
message.
Um, Now, I also do think that, if you are going to conduct these kinds of operations, I think it always makes sense, you take out the leader. And I think, that's always the most effective thing to do, rather than engage in any kind of protracted war. Remember, Reagan went in for that lengthy war against Nicaragua in the 1980s. The United States got nothing out of that. It was a terrible war for Nicaragua. In the end, it almost brought down the Trump presidency through Iran-Contra, and then he got a world court ruling that declared that what the United States was doing was illegal. So there was no, and that was Reagan. So Reagan didn't do what I guess he could have done, which is to simply go in and take out the Sandinista regime. I don't know why he didn't, but he didn't do it. So that's why what I mean is this is probably the most efficient way. If you're going to do
You
these
know, but
things, this is the most efficient way of doing it.
yeah, but you don't want to go where I want to go in this conversation. Is for the Western Hemisphere, I'll be as broad as I can, and for U.S. interests. I mean, how is this furthering American interests? Okay, they've demonstrated, I have no doubt the Delta Force is a pretty efficient outfit. Okay, they get the best and the strongest, maybe even the smartest. I don't know. I'm not surprised they did this. Okay, that's what they're trained to do. But I'll say for the third time. Now, what about tomorrow and next week and next month? Okay, that's why I look at it in kind of a holistic way here. Yeah, Trump got a win in his mind and his backers. I'm not. We'll see how MAGA world sees this as it's like why? Why did you have to do this? Okay, and you said you wouldn't do these kinds of
Yes,
things.
he
So.
said he wouldn't do that, but MAGA world will look upon this and say, "Hey, there were no American casualties. The American operation is now over and done
Well,
with."
over. Okay, we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. But judging by these tweets, by what Rubio said and what Pam Bondi said and what Trump himself said, it sounds like they limited this operation to taking out Maduro, and then they'll see what happens in
Well,
Caracas.
okay, but it's something we agree upon, and that every time we've talked about this topic recently over the last few months here, we always default to the same position. I mean, to what degree does the military support Maduro and his project? Okay, now, given the last 24 hours, well, there's some people pretty close around him that don't believe in it
No,
anymore.
no.
Now, so I mean, how much further is that? Okay. That's why I'm always very, very skeptical of these kind of capers. I mean, they took out Saddam Hussein, and it
Well,
still
that
didn't
was a
work
little
out.
different
It still
because,
didn't
yeah,
work out very well, did it?
well,
Okay.
yeah, well, you know, first of all, that was a full-scale invasion, but they took out Saddam Hussein, and that was their objective. They wanted to get Saddam Hussein out, and they did achieve a regime change. Now they didn't bring political stability to Iraq, but they did take out Saddam Hussein. That was they limited the goal was to take out Saddam Hussein. So in that sense, they got what they wanted. I mean, like, what did they do in Yugoslavia? They took out Milosevic. Okay, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to take out Milosevic. Did they solve all the problems? No, they didn't. They didn't. But that's the United States just limits itself to such objectives, and then
Take
they
out
accomplish.
Gaddafi and everything's fine.
No, no, but no, it definitely wasn't. But that was a very peculiar. That's a very peculiar case, and that was because by the time they went after Gaddafi, he was already,
Yeah, it already blew
yeah, but
up.
he was already kind of,
Yeah,
ill,
but I mean,
and he was
George,
already
I
long
mean.
past his best.
A point of agreement here. I think what Trump will speak in a couple of hours. I bet you my bottom dollar he's going to say new elections. Okay, all right. But functionaries that were associated with the Maduro project. Is there any kind of reconciliation? Is there any kind of amnesty? Um, a lot of people support, I don't know the numbers. I mean, I was watching other reports. Some of the stuff is just outrageously biased too. But apparently, it's pretty hard to gauge public opinion in Venezuela. Very, very hard.
Right.
Okay. If there's going to be any kind of peace and recon, or won't be, there's going to be a mad rush for the border. We're going to see, if people are going to be fearful. These right wingers in Venezuela are a nasty, nasty
Right.
lot of
No,
people.
that's right. Yeah. 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 No, no, I think that there's going to be a, yeah, no, I'm sure there's
Frustration, of course.
a struggle for power there. Um, but the United States, you know, doesn't usually doesn't care too much about that. I mean, the United States, it limits its objectives, and then, well, if there's chaos, there's chaos. Now,
Yeah.
the it is true, and I don't fully understand, and we don't fully understand why Trump was so obsessed with Maduro, and maybe he thinks that this will have an effect on Cuba, but I think it's a little unlikely. It sounds to me like Cuba is very much, at least that's what it seems like. Cuba is much better defended, and have been
Oh, but
for a long time. But you never
it
know,
But no, 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 no. No, Cuba is extremely vulnerable right now,
Oh yeah,
very vulnerable because of the oil shipments that Venezuela was
correct, right.
basically gave away. Okay, I mean, I don't think Cuba has very hard currency reserves. Okay, no, no. We talked about this before. I mean, this is a big plan covering a lot of space and a lot of people. I mean, Marco Rubio, I think by all accounts, and I have no reason not to believe this, he was in the driver's seat on this one, and he wants regime change in Cuba. And it doesn't matter what kind of defenses Cuba has.
Right.
We're not going to see another Bay of Pigs,
No, but I
okay?
don't see. No, no,
No,
I agree.
but the final squeeze, and in this case, the sanctions may end up achieving the goal that they want
Right,
because,
yeah.
I mean, if you're, well, what is it? Someone said to me a couple days ago. They don't talk about energy outages; they call it energy on because when it's on, because it's so very rarely on, this will be the last squeeze.
Right.
Okay, and so. What's the term that Kissinger using? He will make Cuba howl.
No, that was a, yeah, we're going to make that was Nixon. Nixon said, "I'm going to make the Chilean economy scream."
Scream. I'm going back to the Civil War. Okay, Georgia. Okay.
The thing, yeah, no, I think so. It's clear though that, and this we learned this also in Syria, that if you want to survive, you need to pay your military and your security people. I mean, it doesn't matter. The rest of the public may be hungry and miserable, but you have to make sure that the people around you, your military, your security, the people that you rely on, are well paid. And I think Assad did not do that. If
And
you
I think, and we're going to find out if that's exactly what happened
right,
in Caracas in the last 24 hours.
right.
Okay. The thing is, George, is that, there's the perception that you take out the man, in this case, it's a man, and everything falls apart. We don't know that yet. We have no
No,
idea
we don't
about
know that. Not,
that. Okay.
we don't know that.
Um,
Uh, no, I think so. But I think that's the way the United States often perceives things, or that we don't really care what happens afterwards. And so, in a way, you can always say that these operations that the United States has conducted over the years, going all the way back to the Eisenhower with the Arbenz in Guatemala and Mossadegh, and yeah, they have all terrible consequences. But at the same time, they were quite effectively executed. I mean, they were, you have to say that was boom. They did it in a very, very precise way. And then you had the Dominican Republic and everything else. I mean, it's a long, long track record of the United States getting rid of leaders that he didn't like. And then something happens down the road. I guess Trump thinks that now with this He's going to apply the pressure against Panama. They're going to take the canal back. So now you have to think probably that's going to be next on the agenda. They're going to take the canal back from Panama. Obviously, they're going to put the squeeze on Cuba. They're going to put the squeeze on Nicaragua. I mean, when you do something like this, it has an effect on everyone. Everyone is suddenly looking
It
looking around nervously.
it sobers up the mind in a really fast way. Also, you and I have touched upon this, anticipating this, and it has come to pass. I don't know if it was. It's been in the last couple of days, maybe even it was yesterday. Maduro met a very high level Chinese official. I think it was one of their trade representatives. This is all also very much about China.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree.
Very much. And you already mentioned it, the new national security strategy.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that, Trump wants to kick the Chinese out of the
Yes.
Western Hemisphere
No. Yes. That.
completely.
Yeah. That's right. Exactly. I think that's exactly the plan. And that spelled out very explicitly. Yeah. They were going to move them out. Um, but in a way, then if you're the Chinese leaders, I can see why they might now suddenly think, well, this is the time to make our move on Taiwan. I mean, because we're getting squeezed out elsewhere, so we need to consolidate our own position. We want to be a major player. So yeah, I would say for China, you might well think this is really the time to do something with Taiwan. And I don't know the United States would do anything very much about Taiwan. I mean, there's no indication from Trump that he has any particular interest in making a stand for Taiwan. So, if I was one of the leaders in Beijing, I might think that the time has come for to deal with the Taiwan problem once and for all.
Yeah. It'd be very interesting talking about Russian aggression in Ukraine now. Okay. I mean, eh, well, I mean, a great deal of what you say is obviously true. This is the way great powers act. Okay. I just don't like the way they dress it up. He's a narco-terrorist. No,
Uh, well,
you want control of the country's resources. That's what you want. Okay. I mean, that's what I find very distasteful. Okay. And George, we don't know to what degree because and particularly in countries like Venezuelan leaders like Maduro, it's rife with controversy. But it does seem quite clear, and this is a pattern that the United States, and particularly Trump, is involved in. When you're involved in negotiations, then you do this, okay? Because it looks like, I mean, I got pushback from a couple of people, and people in Venezuela, by the way, that this kind of grand bargain stuff wasn't really on the agenda. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But enough people, and enough people that I look to for knowledge on these type of issues, that it was very much real. Radcliffe was involved with the CIA making a deal. Apparently, Maduro caved on just about everything except for on maybe his personal fate.
That's it,
Okay.
and I think that's exactly it. I actually believe that story. I believe the story that he was ready to give everything, and Trump wasn't taking the deal because he wanted Maduro's head on a platter, and obviously Maduro wasn't going to give him that because Maduro would never have enjoyed safety. I mean, the idea that the United States guarantees your safe exit, yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah.
So he
Sign me up for that program.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that wouldn't have happened. So, but that's why I think Trump didn't take the deal that Maduro was offering because he just wasn't even, I think he just felt Maduro didn't really have a leg to stand on. And I think this blockade that they've been putting on Venezuela probably was causing some anxiety among the political class in Venezuela. Hey, we're not going to be able to earn any money anymore. I
Well,
mean,
see, but
this
see
is how
that's
through our oil shipments.
that's why I go back to how deep was the infiltration and acquiescence. Okay, that's what I want to know. Or conversely, which one said no, they're not going to do that. Okay, it'll be very interesting because now it's unless there is someone or a group can consolidate power, at least in the interim, things could fragment.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
very much so. But say I'm taking this is my last payday. I'm taking everything right now. And this woman, who the hell is she? And this fraud Nobel Peace Prize winner, forget her. I mean, it could get really, really nasty.
yeah.
The law
No,
of unintended consequences. Okay. Oh, and if I don't take my shot now, I might not succeed, but I'll never get this shot again. I mean, this is how a lot of people think when they have so much
right. No,
instability.
that's right. That's right. But I mean, the other thing is that, as often happens, too many in the alt media, did a lot of blustering about, Venezuela's going to do this, Venezuela's going to do that, the Americans are going to get their asses kicked and whatever. I mean, I don't know. We are
Yeah,
just,
I absolutely agree with you because um, that's when you rely too much on hope,
right,
and
right,
okay, and because it's wrong.
right,
Well, it's obviously wrong, but we have to get over that it's wrong because it's already happened. And how are you going to deal with the mitigating circumstances afterwards? So I'm not mentioning names here because I like a lot of these people here, but you and I called it really
right.
early on.
No,
You want to get rid of Maduro? Yeah, they can do that.
exactly,
Okay,
exactly. That's the one who knows the consequence, but we always said that I think that's doable. They've
oh yeah.
they've dangled a very big prize, $50 million to
Is
deliver.
Trump going to collect it?
But we don't know. We don't know
You
who
know,
who actually betrayed him. But it's clear there was no military operation. I think it sounds to me these explosions in Caracas was just to show, hey, there's a military operation. No, this was a betrayal. I mean,
no, that was shock and awe.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. But
that's what that was. Okay.
but since it was over
Anyway,
very,
you
very
you want your Delta Force to go in there and you want bombs flying all over the place? No, of course not. Okay, of course not.
so yeah,
You
no,
want you want to have a very controlled environment. Throwing this ordinance, I don't know what they hit, but I mean, it scared the bejesus out of
right, right,
everyone.
right. But I don't think it. I think that was just a distraction. I mean,
Yeah,
the
I
real
agree. I
operation
agree.
was to seize him. They knew
I
where he
agree.
was. They knew where his wife was. Boom, and they did this. So
And
yeah,
significantly, a military base was hit,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
which is sending also a signal, okay.
right, right.
Nice little base you have here.
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
you
yeah,
need to
yeah,
lose it,
yeah.
okay?
But it was yeah, that's it. So it was done very, very quickly. Now, obviously, you know, Trump is going to take the win. But when has to think, everybody's going to be thinking, and if you're in Iran, you're in Tehran, you have to start thinking. I mean, you got to start getting very nervous. What they're capable of, and that's of course what Trump wants people to think. Hey, you see what I can do. And Maduro is someone I actually like. I don't like. So that's the whole purpose of doing such things. And in this, Tehran is also ready and willing to negotiate, just as Maduro was ready and willing to negotiate. But the United States isn't willing to negotiate. So I guess there's going to be a completely pointless UN Security Council, I guess, emergency meeting later on
Yeah,
today.
the operative word, pointless. Thank you,
Yeah,
George.
it'll be pointless. Since when, as you assume, the U.S. representative will say, blah blah, drugs, 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 indictment in New York, and justice has been done, and whatever. So the, you know, these things are completely pointless, and this again goes back to great powers. You know, you're going to try and adopt a resolution. It's just going to be vetoed. So no one's even going to waste their time trying to adopt a UN Security Council resolution that they know the Americans are going to veto.
Well, I'd be very curious to see to our audience here, we have no idea what Venezuelan people think about this right
No,
now. Okay, we don't. I mean, I went to some of the main international broadcasters, and you have these uh, um, uh, the descendants of the colonizers, as it were, okay, Spaniards and a few other Europeans, and they're over the moon about this, okay, intensely ideological. He's a socialist and
Yeah,
communist, like, oh, I'm so sick and
right,
tired
right.
of
No,
hearing
I
that.
agree. I agree.
Okay, and then you have these others being, oh, you don't understand the power of the people, and I look at these polarized views, and I just think none of you speak for the people, as far as I can tell. Okay, all right, so I'm really going to be waiting to see what the reaction is to what's happened here. Maduro did have his followers, okay? He had his constituency. Um, I'm sorry to disappoint. I know George is going to agree with me, and I know a lot of people will disagree with me. I don't give a hoot about their elections. Okay,
No, I say
I just
exactly.
don't. Okay?
The whole thing. Oh, who really won the 2024 election? Who cares? Just it's just I mean, it's just it doesn't matter at all. But I don't know. In terms of his supporters, what you know, they have to adapt themselves. I mean, if you're a supporter, he's gone. He's not coming back. I mean, then so you're going to have to. The supporters have to adapt themselves to the new reality. That they're going to have to adjust themselves to a life without Maduro. And I don't know, is there somebody other than this woman who can take over the mantle of the Chavista? Not sure. But
Again,
the
George, I
supporters,
don't
I think,
even
have to
know.
accept he's not coming back. I mean, that
Yeah,
he's
but oh, he's not coming back. Okay,
yeah,
that we all know that for
yeah.
sure. I mean, the only question is that how many years he's going to spend in prison
But
somewhere.
well, for the rest of his life. I
Yeah.
mean, he's
Okay.
not. He's going to die in prison. I mean, this is Noriega. I mean, that's just that's and he's not going to get a proper trial. I mean, this is the trial is going to be a joke. I mean, you're going to have the usual way you bribe witnesses, and that's what happens in all these trials. You bribe the witnesses, and the witnesses will say whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was, he told me about drugs, and he was. Um, and that he was in with the Trenderagua, yeah, yeah, yeah. He
Yeah.
said it to me several times. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I saw on a broadcast of a former Venezuelan diplomat with the last name Newman, which, it sounds very indigenous, doesn't it, folks? And she was saying, he was head of this cartel, and
Yeah.
he's just like, there's no evidence, zero, even American intelligence said that, okay? But that's what you're going to get, and we're going to get a drumbeat of that. George, what is, you've already mentioned, we mentioned MAGA here. I mean, is this high enough on the priority that, like, Trump is winning again? Is
No,
it?
no,
I just don't see.
no. I don't think.
It gives me, it makes me, I don't live in the US, obviously. I mean, but Trump seems to be like a foreign policy president, not a domestic president.
Well, I absolutely agree. I think I don't think there's any real upside for MAGA. I mean, the only people I think who are going to be supporting Trump on this are actually kind of mainstream liberal opinion. I think this is the kind of thing they like. Like I was watching CNN. They who hate Trump,
Oh,
but they like this. Oh, he was a police state. He was, it was a horrible. They were stealing like mad from the people, whatever. So they kind of like this. New York Times kind of likes this. I mean, they'll say, well, the legality, I don't know, Professor so-and-so, well, I think this is definitely legal, but, everyone knows, no one really cares about that. No U.S. action
well, if you have power, you don't care
and
about
we just get we go move on to the next action. So there's that's all quite pointless. But I don't think MAGA is particularly excited. I think they would be very upset if it turned into a protracted American engagement. And Trump has been very shrewd in not doing that, in not putting boots on the ground, not getting into any lengthy military engagements, like he did with Nigeria. We bombed Nigeria in order to protect the Christians. Over and done with, and we might bomb them again. But that's easy enough to do. I mean, you just bomb them. There's nothing that any the Boko Haram can do to the United States. So it's an easy one. I don't think that MAGA particularly likes it, but there's nothing for them to get upset about.
it. Mm. Well, the as far as you and I and a lot of other people spoke quite lengthily about this new national security strategy. Well, maybe he's not keeping his promises to his voters, but to his own doctrine, the Trump corollary, and we'll see where that goes. I don't. Again, it was my idea. Everyone, I said, George, you want to do one today because I think it's an important milestone. And one of the reasons why I wanted to get kind of ahead of everyone else. Yeah, I looked at the blasé, you know, basically taxi driver takes on this. Okay, because there's going to be a lot of other smart people that'll be talking about it, but they're not doing it right now. But I wanted to get out there and get our feelings because I'm going to stick with the law of unintended consequences. We're going to see where this goes, which will tell us how meticulous or not meticulous this operation was. I'm not impressed with Delta Force because that's what they're supposed to do. Okay. So, they pulled it off. Oh my goodness, a miracle. No, it wasn't a miracle. Okay. That's what
No,
they do.
it wasn't a miracle, but if you limit yourself to certain objectives, and then you say we achieved that objective. Now you can say down the road, what are the consequences? But if you have that, it's like the United States condemns. Okay, oh, what they did to Bernie Sanders, our Ben's in Guatemala. Okay, it wasn't very nice in Guatemala, but that limited objective, they did take out our Ben's. I mean, that was it. Just that, and that's the objective that the United States is. Same with Mossadegh. That was a limited objective, and so it was achieved. Now, I actually think, and this goes, this here you might disagree with you. The Soviet Union used to be very good at doing these kinds of things. That they also said, well, we want to do something, minimal amount of casualties for us. And we have to bite the bullet. We get, a lot of, everyone's going to attack us. Everyone's going to condemn us. But once it's over and done with, that's it. And so what they did in Hungary in 56, they executed the leaders. It was that brutal, what they did. What they did in Czechoslovakia, they went in, they took Dubček, took him to Moscow, and said, we've had it. You want to come out of here alive? You sign on the dotted line and do what we tell you. If you want to stay alive. And he said, yeah, I want to stay alive. You
Yeah,
went to sign
I
on the
mean,
dotted line. It's very, very cruel, very, very
yeah,
brutal.
but that was hermetically closed too. Okay, this what's going on in the Western Hemisphere is very porous. Okay, and are we going to have people making a run for the border? Can the next regime, and we have no idea who's going to be running it, will it be the result of some kind of democratic election? We don't know. Can they solve the problems of Venezuela,
No.
or is it going to make things worse? Okay, so I mean, I keep going back to it. I mean, how well was this thought out? Was it thought out, or was it let's just take Maduro and take our
I,
winning?
I, I would assume that it was thought in terms of this particular objective. They limited themselves to this task all along. I think everything they've been doing, building up this strike force in the Caribbean, all these hitting all these boats in the Caribbean, all of that was geared towards removing Maduro. And then I think when they realized Maduro, this wasn't doing the job, Maduro wasn't leaving. And then they finally said, all right, well, we just have to go in and take him out physically. So I think everything was to do with Maduro. I don't think they're thinking, 5, 6 steps down the road,
Okay,
what
well.
happens then. I think they just limited themselves just to this.
Just a thought, George. Um, we know, based on American intelligence, with Tulsi Gabbard, she fired guys that, gave a reasonable assessment of what's going on with drugs vis-a-vis Venezuela. I wonder now if the drug trade in Venezuela will take off. Okay. Will it be a new vector for the drug producing world? Because Venezuela is just not one of them. It might become one now, depending on the outcome. Okay. I
It's
mean,
sure.
it's a, Breaking Bad, everybody. It's a very tempting path. It's very dangerous.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it's a
But I
real.
mean, that's a path. You say, well, why should the Colombians and all these other people get a payday? Let's us all get a payday too.
Yeah, no, I think that getting Noriega out, they didn't do anything to halt the drug trade. In fact, the drug trade
I don't know. We don't know the causality. Okay, but
no, we
you
know,
can
but no,
say
we
the
don't know the
drug trade
causality,
increased.
but
It increased.
we know it didn't end it. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And that it actually increased. The drug trade increased after the departure of Noriega. So why did they take out Noriega? I don't know. He just didn't play ball with Washington. So
Yeah.
it was
Well,
always
he played
baffling even at
ball
the
and
time why they took him out.
he played ball until he didn't play ball.
Yeah, that's right. So it was always a bit of a mystery. I mean, with others that we were talking about, like Arbenz or Mossadegh, they were seen to be lefties, so you could see why the Americans wanted them out. Ortega and so, but I didn't understand the Noriega. Noriega was not a lefty. I mean, I don't. So why was there a need to take him out?
Well, no,
And
no,
Maduro is a sort of a lefty, but hardly
yeah,
an
but
ideological lefty.
Ortega became a lefty after the pressure was being applied to him. Okay, you could say that very much the same thing about Fidel Castro. He was national liberation.
Right.
Okay,
I mean,
and
I
then
think he probably was. I think he probably
yeah,
was.
no, no. I mean, the Cuban Communist Party was established in what year? 1972. Okay,
Right. But I think
but
he was aligned with
you
Washington.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Right.
you have to choose sides. And what's interesting, going back to China, is that they're telling the hemisphere you have no side to turn to now.
You're right.
You can't turn to the Russians. You can't turn to the Chinese. You're in our back pocket. You are the backyard, and we're going to construct a trading. I was going to say free trade, but well, probably won't be free trade, but a trading bloc. That's what Trump wants. That's
No,
what
you
these
must
people.
but it's also.
They
I mean,
want. I mean, they'll outsource the Middle East. Blah blah blah. Israel always play a special role in that in any American administration presumably. But I mean, this is what grab Greenland. Yeah, is Greenland where it's on the top, so it's not Western Hemisphere. It's not East. What is Greenland?
I
I'm
don't know.
not
I think
sure.
Trump will.
Because all the maps in the world are so distorted.
Right.
Like Greenland is so, no, Greenland's really small.
Right.
The way you do it with the longitude and the latitudes and all that, it kind of spreads it out. It's like much bigger than it really is. Okay. I don't even know if it's in the Western Hemisphere, or maybe they'll say, like the Gulf of Mexico, now it's the Gulf of America,
Right.
and Greenland is in the Western Hemisphere.
Right, right. Well, I think that's what Trump will definitely say. It's in the Western Hemisphere, and I think, yeah, he's going to make his move for Greenland, and I think Panama. I think he's going to retake the Panama Canal, again as part of a move against China. Um, but I think it is a lesson. Maduro had good relations with Russia. Maduro had good relations with China. So
Well,
when
they had a security pact, what, three
yeah,
months ago?
exactly. That's right. And when Putin sent out his New Year greetings, Maduro was one of the people he sent out New Year greetings to. So he's gone. And then you have to say Iran is in the crosshairs, and Iran has to then appreciate that really no one is coming to your rescue. This is, you're on your own, and that's that does sober, one's perspective. That you're facing the United States. You can say okay Israel, but you're facing the United States. Now the question is how deeply is the United States willing to commit itself against Iran, and that's not clear. But Iran knows that it has to use its own wits and its own capabilities to survive.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. No, the international implications are enormous here, and we're seeing how the you know, what Switzerland says about this, it's all nice and fine. They have a right to say it, but it doesn't matter, okay? And what other countries actually say doesn't matter. It's how they're going to act and react.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see that play out very quickly, actually. But I said it to you the last time we talked about this. I mean, the Americans want the Chinese out of the
Yeah.
Western Hemisphere.
Right.
There's no discussion about that. There's going to be no discussion. All
Right.
right.
Right. Right. No, that's right. Um, yes. I mean, what I mean, this is really just speculating. How does this affect Ukraine? I'm
Well,
not.
no, I think it's just red-faced. It's a red-faced thing right now. Okay,
Right.
because now the Americans, here the Europeans, they're impoverishing themselves to try to win a war that they cannot win. Okay, and the longer it goes on, the more humiliated they'll be. And then look at Trump. Well, Trump did a bad thing, but I mean, he did win.
It did,
Okay.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I was waiting for Kaya Kallas to come out with her verbiage, and that's
Correct. That's
exactly what
right.
it was.
That
Because they're kind of paralyzed right now. The leader of their military bloc just toppled, or forcibly removed the leader of another country. Is we don't Can we say it's regime change yet? Well, I think in principle, yes, but I think that's still a question mark. We might find that out in 24 hours, 36 hours. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. I was messaging with Alistair Crook today, and I said, "Yeah, what are the Europeans going to say?" Okay, because what can they say?
right. Right, right. Well, no, that's right. But but it's an interesting issue because, um, America says, okay, this is Western Hemisphere, that's ours. So then China says, okay, well then, Taiwan, that's ours. But then you go to the European continent, and there you see you get a real. This is where the tug of war takes place between Russia and NATO land, because then Russia says, yeah, we've got our sphere of influence, which is Ukraine, Belarus, Baltic states, and we kind of wonder with it. And the Europeans say, no, 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 that's ours. Well, that's a very interesting one. How does that resolve itself? Where does the United States? Because the United States is more or less saying we don't have a dog in this fight. But it's clear now that the Russians need to carve out for themselves a sphere of influence. United
And
States has it in the Western Hemisphere. Russia has to have it. The Europeans don't want it. So I think this is why it's heading towards war. There's going to be a
well,
war clearly
yeah,
over this over the fate of this
yeah.
of the European continent.
Well, one would, I think the Europeans would like to think that there has to be some kind of symmetry here. They won't say it publicly because it's politically embarrassing. But okay, yeah, the Americans have their sphere of influence, and that's a pretty substantial sphere. Okay, and the Russians obviously want to have a security sphere of influence, and the Europeans, well, what about the Europeans?
Well, no, but
Because they're stuck. They have dug themselves such a deep hole that it's impossible. I mean, so where's your military? It's NATO. Well, no, that's America. Okay, it's not you people.
right,
The cupboard is bare.
right, right.
Okay,
No,
and
no, no,
it's
that's right.
so barren. You're going into massive debt on a hope maybe you'll be able to become some kind of global power. I'm not putting my money on that at all. Okay, so I mean. That's one of the interesting consequences that the Europeans have actually even marginalized themselves
Well,
even
that's
more.
that's right. No, their plan has always been with the United States. If you that's why it's the transatlantic alliance. If you've got the United States, then we can carve out our little sphere of influence. We basically can move NATO right up to Russia's borders. So Russia's completely surrounded by NATO. Then everything. Belarus will be in NATO. Ukraine will be in NATO. Baltic states. Everyone's going to be in NATO, and then Russia will just be squeezed out. But that is predicated on the United States having our back. But the United States, if you go by that national security strategy document, the United States says we're not really interested in all of this. That's not
Well,
part of
and
our
also
security concerns.
add to that something that's very important, and we're in a very unusual situation politically in the United States because Trump is in his second term, and he is he's already a lame duck, and so his people, and whoever these people like Marco Rubio have an agenda. The clock is ticking. We
Yeah,
need and what this administration I think wants to do because the poor Europeans that are waiting for another Joe Biden to return, okay, which is just ridiculous. Trump and his people, they want to leave their mark that'll make
right.
it irreversible,
Yeah.
okay? Irreversible. That's what when we talked about the national security strategy, that's one of the things that I was mentioning with George is that, this is starting a precedent where it's going to be very difficult to turn it back, okay? And plus, there are going to be elites in the United States that say, "Hey, wow, new markets to pillage. We can do whatever we
No,
want."
no, this is
And the Western Hemisphere is absolutely energy
right.
self-sufficient.
This is among American elites. This is going to go down very, very well. It's MAGA. MAGA's not terribly happy, but they're not. They don't see any downsides as long as it's limited. But America's elites say, yeah, this is fantastic. No one's going to be shedding any tears over Maduro, and no one's going to be shedding any tears if America now decides to make a move for against Cuba. They say,
Yeah,
yeah,
because
fantastic.
there's nothing to push back against
No,
it.
there's nothing. No, that's right. They say, hey,
It doesn't exist. Okay.
exactly. They say this is unfinished business. That's what Trump's saying. Unfinished business. Eisenhower didn't do it. Kennedy didn't do it. No one did it. Even Reagan couldn't do it. Now I'm going to do it. I'm going to get the communists out of Cuba. So I think that's that. I think America's elites will support him on this.
And the Europeans are going to have found themselves left out in the
Yep.
cold. And I think this is an indicative, at least indicative, is that the Americans don't have any particular interest in saving the
No, I
Europeans.
don't think so. No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
And will that sober up minds in Europe? Probably not. Not this crowd, not this crew.
No.
And I think that sense of being shunned, not isolated. There's too many connections still, but they're being shunned. And I think it's going to make them more aggressive, not conciliatory.
No, I think so too. Yeah.
So.
Right.
Okay, I wanted to get out the gate early on this here, and maybe I will be proven completely wrong, which is absolutely fine. I learn every time I talk with George. He always brings up good perspectives. Obviously, in this podcast, we didn't agree on everything, but I think you like that. Okay?
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Exactly. So, well, there's a lot to unpack, and we're
Yeah.
in the early hours. So, but by the time we speak next, I think which will be on Sunday, I think we're going to know a lot more, and we can disagree some more, but I think we'll have more more,
Okay,
more
good.
facts to
That's why. That's why when I know that we're going to talk, George, I do my research too. Okay, 'cause I don't want to be sandbagged like, oh, okay. So this is Saturday. This time approximately tomorrow on Sunday, we'll have an update on what's going on and anything else that's important to us. We had that terrible bombing, Christmas bombing of Russians by the Ukrainians, right off the back of the alleged attack on Putin, which I've been watching the media coverage of that. Pretty sloppy on the part of the West. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. I'm starting another podcast when I shouldn't be doing it. This is Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. This is a new year. The tip jar is empty.
tip jar is empty and body is hungry. And therefore it says, hey, I need to be fed. And I'm not in a good mood. These Moscow winters are getting him down, and yeah, no, he doesn't like it at all. I can go without any Moscow winters, so he wants things in the tip jar.
He's sleeping.
Yeah, so he's been working hard. He's just exhausted. And so, if you have anything, left over from last year, that you're not, putting to any good use, some, gold coins, and some, $100 bills, just put it straight into the tip jar. You can see, like,
It's all about the Benjamins.
no,
Yep.
exactly. He's exhausted. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and above all, we're going to help get the dogs through this brutal Stalingrad-like winter. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.